Hello, Internet friend. Today on Value Side, America the Deceiver, How President Trump Took Us to War. I'm David Ravel. I'm reminded of the motto of the Mossad, by deception, we shall wage war. In each of the two wars against Iran, U.S. President Donald J. Trump sought to achieve the element of surprise by the use of deception. For both the 12-day war last July and today's current conflict, President Trump promised that a negotiated peace was possible. We want no nuclear weapons in Iran, and they're not saying those golden words, said President Trump. In other words, Trump was saying that peace was possible if Iran did not seek nuclear weapons, something that was in the realm of possibility if talks continued. Now, the next round of negotiations was scheduled for this coming Wednesday, March 4th. Regrettably, as in the case of the 12-day war, the fighting interrupted the negotiations. Trump deceived Iran into believing the negotiations would continue. It was a deception that may win some battlefield advantage, but at the cost of America's credibility. In both Iran wars, further negotiations were scheduled. Both sides appeared willing to continue talking, but the president chose to go to battle each time. Deception, indeed. Moreover, it seems that the president's objective is no longer what it appeared to be. Publicly, the administration has variously declared that its objectives are the elimination of Iran's nuclear capability, and/or elimination of Iran's ballistic missiles, and/or protection of the Iranian protesters. However, it's becoming clear that both America and Israel seek nothing less than a change in the Iranian government. Regime change, if you please. Now, in President Trump's proto-declaration of war, he declared negotiations with Tehran to be difficult. And we sought repeatedly to make a deal. We tried. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it again. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't know what was happening. They just wanted to practice evil. Unquote, President Trump. Of course, for Donald Trump, the man who wrote the book on The Art of the Deal, this should have come as no surprise. Negotiations at any level, but especially when the stakes are this high, take time and patience. But Trump sought a tactical battlefield advantage, choosing to deceive rather than continue talking. Was Trump seeking peace or merely deception? It's a conclusion that increasingly becomes the center of speculation, especially when analyzing the events of the last couple of weeks. Just 17 days ago, on February 11, 2026, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made a hastily arranged and totally secret visit to the White House. Now, obviously, there was something very important and totally private that he needed to discuss with the U.S. president. For 3 hours, the men huddled in Trump's office. Afterward, for the first time in memory, no press conference was held. It was as if the meeting never took place. Reuters posted a picture of the Israeli flag over Blair House as its only proof that Netanyahu had been in town. Then, less than 2.5 weeks later, Israel and the United States began a coordinated attack on Iran. Coincidence? An increasing number of people in the press don't think so. They believe these were the last-minute preparations for today's war. It was deception again. And at its core, deception is an unruly beast that afflicts all who deal in it. Those who use deception often get caught up in its lies. In the president's initial remarks on the current conflict, he says, quote, "This regime will soon learn that no one should challenge the strength and might of the United States Armed Forces. I built and rebuilt our military in my first administration, and there's no military on earth even close to its power, strength, or sophistication." Unquote, U.S. President Donald Trump again. Now, while most analysts would agree with that assessment, is that still the case today? Are the American forces at optimal fighting readiness? There are several indications that they may not be. The Ukraine war has depleted many of our munitions and supplies, everything from the 155mm artillery shells to the Patriot II and THAAD anti-missile systems, vital for fighting Iran. The USS Gerald Ford, the world's largest and most capable aircraft carrier, has suffered from improper sewage disposal. Although this has been the objective of some humor, it's no laughing matter. Disease follows sewage problems, and that's likely to have already begun for the Ford. What's more, this crew has been at sea for 11 months, and it's weary, a tough time for them to go to battle stations. So what's the rush? Why do we need to fight now when negotiations were scheduled to continue and our military may not be as prepared as it could be in a couple of months? The likely answer is to build the narrative, a plausible explanation used to convince the American public that this war is somehow justifiable. In other words, to make the deception complete. Finally, it's important to note that the Venezuela window is closed. Less than 2 months ago, the United States performed its most recent regime change, with the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in Operation Absolute Resolve. In an incredibly precise action, U.S. forces were able to land, capture Maduro, and return to their ships in less than 4 hours. Note: the flagship for this operation was the USS Gerald Ford, that same aircraft carrier that is now fighting Iran. Unfortunately, if the Maduro capture is the model of regime change, then that model needs to be modified in the current conflict. From all reports, few, if any, of the Iranian leadership have been captured or killed. And unless we achieve that goal soon, popular support for this war will fade rapidly. The American people are in no mood to endure yet another endless war. And that's the fatal risk for the Trump administration, that they started believing their own deception, that Iran is incredibly weak or that American forces are omnipotent. Circumstances have a way of altering that on the battlefield. Little things, like dysentery, have a way of undercutting a fighting advantage. When all is said and done, this current conflict in Iran might result in regime change, but not in Tehran, in Washington. And that's today's Value Side. For all of our articles and podcasts, visit valueside.com. I'm David Ravel. ValueSide is independently written and researched. The views expressed are strictly my own.